Hello, everyone, and we're so glad to have you with us today here at Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham, and we're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. It's now post-Liberation Day in America. President Donald Trump announced his long-awaited tariffs on the world. And today we bring you the latest on the response, as well as other stories from the United States and around the world. But first, here's a look at the latest headlines. Hungary withdraws from the International Criminal Court as its Prime Minister Viktor Orban welcomes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who faces an ICC arrest warrant. Israel steps up airstrikes on Syria, hitting military targets, and declares the attack a warning to the new Islamist leaders in Damascus. Russia accuses Ukraine of launching at least 30 provocative attacks on Moscow's energy facilities, despite an energy ceasefire brokered by the United States. China claims to have arrested 3 spies from the Philippines and destroyed an espionage network as Beijing and Manila confront each other over the South China Sea. And Turkish police detained 11 people as part of an investigation into social media calls for an economic boycott backed by the opposition following the arrest of the former Istanbul mayor. President Donald Trump's tariff tsunami has arrived, and he's boldly declared the golden age of America has also begun. These hefty import taxes aim to tackle trade imbalances, protect American jobs, and reshape the rules of global commerce.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
But his sweeping tariffs have already stirred up a storm of reactions from allies and rivals alike. Here's how the world, in fact, is reacting. First, we begin with China. The commander-in-chief imposed a massive 54% tariff on all Chinese imports. The tariffs now add at least 34% on so-called reciprocal tariffs to existing 20% duties on all Chinese imports to the United States. Beijing swiftly condemned the tariffs as typical unilateral bullying, vowing to strike back hard.
The U.S. side, under the guise of reciprocity, imposed tariffs on products from many countries, including China. China firmly opposes this and will take necessary measures to resolutely safeguard its legitimate interests.
And now we move to Japan. Tokyo charges 46% duties on cars imported by America, and the commander-in-chief in turn has imposed exactly half as an import duty, charging Japan 24%. Japanese Prime Minister called the move very disappointing, and Tokyo is now mulling challenging the tariffs at the World Trade Organization.
Japan has repeatedly explained its concerns at various levels and has urged that unilateral tariff measures should not be taken. Despite this, the U.S. government has announced comprehensive tariff measures, which is extremely regrettable.
President Trump's tariff thunder rained on India as well. Despite the praise for Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a great friend, India faces a 27% tariff on its goods. President Trump argued this was fair, claiming India imposes a 52% charge on American products.
Yeah, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right.
The EU was hit with a 20% tariff, prompting it to call the move a major blow to the world economy. The bloc, already facing tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos, is gearing up for countermeasures.
Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The costs of doing business with the United States will drastically increase. And what is more, there seems to be no order in the disorder, no clear path through the complexity and chaos that is being created as all U.S. trading partners are hit.
The UK, however, is relieved to avoid the 20% rate, but still faces a 10% tariff on all goods. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's diplomatic approach seems to have softened the blow, but the levy still threatens thousands of jobs and risks slowing economic growth. Now, in a surprising twist, Russia and North Korea were spared from the new tariffs. The White House explained that existing sanctions on both nations already preclude any meaningful trade. In 2024, U.S. trade with Russia totaled just $3.5 billion. Meanwhile, U.S. trade with North Korea in 2023 was a mere $183,000. And as the dust settles, the world waits to see if the commander-in-chief's vision of a golden age for America will shine brightly or cast a long shadow over global trade. And staying on the tariffs, President Donald Trump also announced the implementation of 25% tariffs on the auto industry, while exempting essential and strategic industries like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. While also launching the auto tariffs, President Trump blamed his predecessor, Joe Biden, for devastating the U.S. industrial base.
But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
Now, in his address, President Trump did not acknowledge the concerns over high prices of new cars that the American consumers will certainly pay due to these tariffs. The 25% tariffs will apply to all cars assembled outside the United States and will cover more than $460 billion worth of U.S. vehicles and vehicle parts imports. The automobile tariffs go into effect immediately, and those on imported auto parts will go into effect starting May 3rd. This means from May, even Americans who do not plan to buy new cars could be impacted because they would pay more for their car repairs. There will also be a partial exemption for cars made in Mexico and Canada as a result of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement, or the USMCA. Now, car makers will not have to pay multiple duties on parts like engines, transmissions, or batteries that were made in the U.S. and later installed in cars in Mexican or Canadian factories. Now, due to this, auto giants like General Motors, which derive their supply chain from Canada and Mexico, will not be hit as bad as feared. Car makers like Tesla and Honda, too, have been saved from the worst blow. But at the same time, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, and sports car maker Porsche have been worse hit by the auto tariffs due to foreign origin of their auto components. Notably, President Trump announced 32% tariff rates for Taiwan, but exempted semiconductors from tariffs, which is the self-ruled island's biggest export to the United States. Now, this means that the world's biggest semiconductor makers won't face the brunt of Trump's tariffs. President Trump decried Taiwan's prominence in semiconductor production and suggested his policies would make America win the new age technological race of prominence, the chip wars.
Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it. Now we have almost none of it.
And President Trump has cited the need to boost domestic manufacturing behind his much anticipated tariff tirade. But can the United States become its own manufacturing powerhouse by antagonizing its trade partners worldwide? And now President Donald Trump wants Americans to believe he solved their egg crisis. During his speech yesterday, he proudly declared that egg prices have plummeted by 59% thanks to his administration's swift actions. With Easter approaching, he even joked that people were once urged to use plastic eggs due to egg shortages, but not anymore. But is the reality as sunny side up as Trump claims? Our report has more.
Madam Secretary, Agriculture, great job you did on eggs, by the way. The egg prices came down 50%. You got them down 50%. Once we got involved, they were going through the sky. The egg prices, they were going through the sky, and you did a fantastic job. Now we have lots of eggs, and they're much cheaper, down about 59% now, and they're going down further.
At the White House's Rose Garden, while unveiling bombshell tariffs, US President Donald Trump most definitely didn't forget to leave the eggs out. In fact, he took a victory lap, claiming egg prices dropped dramatically by 59% since he took over. Trump went on to recount how he had been blamed for soaring egg prices shortly after taking office.
This year, but in February, core inflation dropped to the lowest rate in 4 years. And the price of eggs, as you know, just in a month and a half, we were there for 4 weeks. And the first week, I got blamed for eggs. I said, I just got here. They said eggs have gone up at like 250% and you can't get eggs. And they were going crazy. And I said, I just got here.
With Easter just around the corner on April 20th, Trump quipped that people were being urged to use plastic eggs instead of real ones due to past shortages.
It's fantastic. They were saying that for Easter, please don't use eggs. Could you use plastic eggs? And you really came through. It's an amazing job. Thank you very much, Brooke. You did great. But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it in the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries.
But do the numbers back up Trump's claims?
I campaigned on that.
Here is the real situation. While egg prices have indeed come down, the drop is nowhere near the 59% figure Trump quoted. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or the USDA, wholesale egg prices fell to $3 per dozen as of April 2nd. That's only a 9% decrease from the previous week. The USDA report noted that grocery store shelves are now fully stocked again, and consumers no longer face purchasing limits. In February 2025, the average retail price of eggs was around $5.90 per dozen. The recent decline is largely due to a slowdown in avian flu outbreaks and a dip in demand after previously high prices forced consumers to cut back. Sellers say that now there's plenty of supply. Farmers in Pennsylvania, among other states, have been replenishing their stock of egg-laying hens, hence helping boost production. So the demand went down and the supply went up, pushing the prices lower. It's simple economics. However, the USDA cautioned that lower wholesale prices might take weeks to reflect in retail stores. Egg prices have been particularly volatile since the bird flu outbreak in 2022. The virus devastated poultry farms, leading to a slaughter of over 150 million birds in an effort to control the spread. The supply chain disruptions drove egg prices to a record high, forcing the US to look for alternative sources, including imports. While Trump's claims about a dramatic price drop may be exaggerated, there's no denying that the worst of the egg crisis appears to be over for now. However, whether prices continue to fall or climb once again will depend on factors like production stability, further avian flu outbreaks, and consumer demands. Looks like for now, the Americans can enjoy a variety of egg-based breakfasts.
And now to a $1 million question about a $1 billion man. Is Elon Musk a liability or an asset for Donald Trump? For months now, the two men have been inseparable. But is the bromance cooling off? There's speculation that Elon Musk will leave the Trump administration soon as he reaches the legal limit allowed for special government employees. But does that mean his influence on setting Trump's agenda and policy will wane as well? Or will President Trump's first buddy be back in a new avatar? And are critics counting their chickens before they hatch? We've got the latest in our next report.
Once inseparable, President Trump and Elon Musk now face growing questions about their partnership. Because their relationship, which was once defined by camaraderie, mutual admiration, and unwavering support, now appears to be strained. The cracks began to show when the commander-in-chief was set to unveil tariffs on Liberation Day. The front row was occupied by top Trump administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. However, among all the important people, President Trump's billionaire buddy was missing.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And it seemed like the president was least bothered, because all his attention was on once shy Vice President J.D. Vance.
We're pleased to be joined on this momentous occasion by Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D., thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where are you, J.D.? No, that wasn't too hard to find. I was looking, he likes to take a low-key attitude, so usually we sit right in front. He's gaining a lot of confidence, Mike, isn't it?
Now, this comes after Musk's foray into Wisconsin politics backfired.
We did it. You did all
Because
the work.
even though he backed conservative Brad Schimmel for a critical Supreme Court seat, funneling millions into his campaign, Schimmel lost by 10 points. Some even criticized the billionaire's intervention and blamed it for energizing the Democratic voters.
Elon Musk came to Wisconsin and said, I want to give you money in exchange for your voting, or in exchange for your pledge to vote, or something like that. This doesn't sit well with Wisconsinites. They want money out of politics.
The defeat was a damaging misstep, and this comes amid the global Tesla takedown protests over federal cuts and Doge firings. So whispers of whether Musk is more a liability than an asset to the Trump administration are getting louder.
For some reason to run for a third.
While President Trump hasn't said anything against Musk publicly, the commander-in-chief acknowledged that the billionaire's time as a special government employee is coming to an end.
Amazing, but I also think he's got a big company to run, and so at some point he's going to be going back. He wants to.
Musk is a polarizing figure. There is no love lost between him and the Democrats. His ruthless approach, his controversial statements like equating Social Security to a Ponzi scheme haven't earned him any friends.
Deficit reduction.
Social Security is not charity. It is not some giveaway. Social Security is something that people earned by paying into it for all of their working years.
So while Musk's future with Doge seems to be coming to an end, will his influence on President Trump and his administration also wane? Only time will tell. But Musk comes with deep pockets, and Donald Trump knows that. So don't hold your breath for the first buddy's full retreat.
And finally, we shift our focus to the deepening crisis in Haiti, where the capital, Port-au-Prince, has become a battleground controlled by powerful armed gangs. Clashes erupted as thousands took to the streets to protest against surging gang violence. And at least a dozen of the protesters were heavily armed and opened fire on officers who responded outside the offices of the Prime Minister and the Transitional Presidential Council. Some demonstrators also brandished machetes as they weaved their way through the streets of the capital city. Protesters set up barricades and blocked roads, prompting shops and schools to close as Port-au-Prince was largely paralyzed.
We came here to give the government our demands. We demand freedom, we demand security. We need to be able to work and save our country.
Armed gangs that already control 85% of the capital are in fact pillaging communities in a bid to seize control of even more territory, forcing over 60,000 to flee their homes last month alone. These gangs have even started plundering communities beyond Port-au-Prince now. In fact, earlier this week, they attacked the city of Mirabelles in central Haiti, where they stormed a prison and released more than 500 inmates. For nearly a year, a transitional government has been in place in Haiti. However, it's been unable to stem the violence unleashed by a coalition of gangs known as V Ensemble. The unrest has forced over 1 million people to flee their homes, pushed thousands into severe hunger, and has crippled the nation's economy. These gangs have been accused of widespread extortion, mass rapes, and killings. Many critics point fingers at the transitional government, alleging that their poor response is linked to corruption and even collusion with the armed gangs and their financial backers. The government, however, vehemently denies these accusations, and adding to Haiti's woes, the United States announced a 10% tariff on goods from Haiti. The situation in Haiti remains deeply precarious, and now the added burden of tariffs raises further concerns about the future stability and well-being of the Haitian people. That's Firstpost America for this Thursday, April 3rd. I'm Eric Ham, signing off from our studios here in Washington. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
The Prime Minister Modi. How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Bluntly, Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.